Intel stock currently sitting at roughly 100 billion US dollar market capitalization, could be our best option out there in terms of 5 to 10x return in longer term scenario. If you have patience and are waiting for 5 to 10 years, I think this could be probably the best option, but also this is the option with the highest risk. So I'm not gonna shy away from that. But let's look at why I talk about those, 10x numbers. So remember that Intel is manufacturing semiconductors, right? Now, what other company is manufacturing semiconductors that everyone knows about these days? Taiwan Semiconductor, TSMC, currently sitting at a market cap of 10 times of that of Intel, almost 9 times to be exact. But yeah, and they actually been over 1 trillion US dollar just recently. So the interesting thing here is not only is Intel competing against TSMC, which means they could one day in the future, if they execute well on their manufacturing, be in TSMC's position, but they're also competing against, the designers of the semiconductors like AMD, Nvidia, Marvell, even the likes of Broadcom, or even the likes of Apple and Amazon that are making their own server CPU chips. So Intel has probably the highest ceiling here, although they are very, very far away from that today. The good thing about that opportunity is also that you get the opportunity to right now invest in that company that could one day in the future be the best company on the planet again, because they were that once, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we can see that there's a lot of nice new rumors coming out there. Intel Foundry Services to produce 3 nanometer chips for major data center customer. That was in January of 2023, so 2 years ago. That was a major win. We can see that they mentioned also MediaTek, and currently those contracts being at 4 billion. Again, this is a 2-year-old headline there, and I think the major customer there was probably Amazon with their AVS server chips. Now again, going to more recent news, we can see that Intel pushes out Clearwater Forest, which is their 7th generation Xenon server CPU lineup, and they sidelined Falcon Shores accelerators for AI GPU market. We can see that the Clearwater Forest that we mentioned is going to be based on Intel 18A, and this is where things are getting really interesting, because again, in the server CPU they're competing against AMD and indirectly against TSMC, because AMD is designing the chip and TSMC is manufacturing the chip. So they're essentially fighting with both of those two companies, and 18A, to my understanding, should, on equal terms, if you compare apple to apple, be better than TSMC 3 nanometer, in my opinion. At least be very competitive to that. And the interesting thing is that some people think that TSMC is gonna move on to the 2 nanometer process, but it looks like 2 nanometer is probably for high volume manufacturing at least 1 year from now, and even then it's gonna be for the small yield and small dice like the Apple Silicon chips on iPhones, which are very, very small chips compared to like server CPU chips that are in the hundreds of square millimeter size, whereas the chips going into the Apple iPhones like A15, 16, 17s, those are like at best maybe sometimes above 100 square millimeters, but usually they're even like in the 80 square millimeter size. So we are talking like, we are not comparing apples to apples there. But in terms of server CPU size chips, AMD is gonna be, they are currently on the 4 nanometer process with the Zen 5 based CPUs, Turin Dense and Turin X. But in the next generation, in the the Venice lineup, which is gonna be based on the Zen 6 core, it's gonna be on N3E, so one derivative of TSMC's 3 nanometer process. And in my opinion, that's gonna be the first time in the past 5 years where Intel is gonna be, at the very least, on par with AMD in terms of manufacturing of the transistors on the node, but most likely even have an edge, maybe slight edge, or in some cases even a substantial edge. Now it's still yet to be seen if, even if they have a better manufacturing node, are they able to design a better chip, because it's not only manufacturing. Remember that AMD's part of AMD's success is not only TSMC, it's the fact that they are amazingly well in terms of designing the chips with the current manufacturing limitations. They get the most out of those manufacturing capabilities. That's why Lisa Su and AMD has been so strong over the past 5 years. But I think this is gonna be in a time where Intel is gonna be really competitive, and in my opinion there's a lot going for them. We can also see that this post from March 6 from Sravan Kundujala, sorry for the pronunciation, Intel at the conference recently, they mentioned that 18A yields are slightly ahead of Meteor Lake at the same time of development stage. Meteor Lake was, I think, the mobile laptop APU, probably launched in December of 2023, but was essentially in high volume designs in laptops in early 2024. The successor to Meteor Lake was Lunar Lake. And then the first external customer of 18A is in tape out for the first half of next year, so 2026. But again, that's the external customer, right? I would suggest that probably they're gonna be first out in high volume manufacturing with the internal based project. That's probably gonna be based on the Panther Lake, which is the successor to Lunar Lake mobile APUs for laptops. It's gonna be launched in the second half, but probably volume manufacturing will be in early 2026, similar to Meteor Lake and Lunar Lake. Now, again, Intel 18A is on track. It's competitive with TSMC 3 and 2 nanometer class. And remember, when I say this, sure, TSMC, even if they're going very strong with N2 next year, the main point here is that AMD, the main competitor to Intel, they're not gonna use N2 next year. Most of the stuff points to the fact that AMD is gonna be at best on N3 next year. So it doesn't mean that just because TSMC is using N2 with Apple on their A18 chips or A19 or whatever it could be, it doesn't mean that AMD necessarily does have access to that chip at the same time. They also, on the 14th of March of this year, had this headline from Tom's Hardware: Intel reaches exciting milestone for 18A, 1.8 nanometer class wafers with first run at Arizona fab. This is very important because, again, this gentleman Mojo, also really good follow on X and Twitter, said that the most important announcement today, which was, I think this was probably on March 13th, wasn't this new CEO announcement. It was the fact that this 18A wafers coming off the line at their fab in Arizona. And he says that this fab is only meant to start output in 25, so it looks like it's ahead of schedule. And another one important point here is that is, I believe, their high volume manufacturing fab in US in Arizona. So everything looks like, doesn't look great, but it points to being kind of moving in the right direction. We have also this headline from 21st of January, Intel Foundry gains new defense client on 18A process. I think everything is kind of going to the point that I'm not going to tell you that Intel's financial health is going to be great in 2025. They're going to probably bleed a lot of money this year and even most likely next year. But remember that the stock price moves to where people believe the company is going. And I believe we have already seen the first sign that some parts of the market start to understand that Intel might possibly be going in the right direction. In this year to date, they're up 21%. Sure, it's just one data point and it's just, essentially 12 weeks of performance for the stock. But again, people are investing in the company's future, like 6, 12, 18 months from now, even 24, even like 3 years from now. And I do believe as days go on, we are getting close and close to the bottoming of Intel. I don't think they're going to get bankrupt. I don't think they're going to divide the company in, a manufacturing and a design side. I think that would be a very bad mistake for the company. I think the long thing here, especially with the announcement of the new CEO, is that they're going to hang in there. They're going to make sure 18A and the successor to that 14A is going to be very, very strong. And they're going to utilize that strength to firstly gain clients from TSMC as an external semiconductor manufacturing for external customers like Amazon, like Google, Nvidia, even possibly AMD in the future. And after they manage to do that, they're going to also ride the wave of having advantage in newer nodes compared to people that are using TSMC, like AMD, like Nvidia, in every single market. Now, Intel might be losing market share in the CPU, server CPUs, in laptop CPUs, in essentially everywhere, right? Left, right, center. they're barely visible in the AI GPU space. Remember that Nvidia is dominating, and the like leftovers are left to AMD. So and Intel is nowhere near to be seen. I don't think they even have a couple of hundred millions in AI GPU revenue. Possibly in that range. Maybe even let's say even 500 million. Even AMD is on a path to like do 20 times that this year, and Nvidia they're gonna do like 200 times that, or like 300 times that kind of sales. So they don't have any presence, but also that zero presence is the opportunity going into the future. They like imagine if everything goes well, they execute on 18A, execute on 14A, continue on this path for year in year out. They can manufacture their own AI GPUs on the best nodes, have the best price, the best margin on those chips, get a price advantage, undercut both Nvidia and AMD on those AI GPUs. I mean, you could see a possibility where Intel could easily gain, they could easily double or triple their revenue and probably increase their margin to extent that we haven't seen in a long time. So do I think this is one of the most risky plays in the market? For sure. But do I think this is one of the best risk reward in the market? Currently I think so, and I don't think I have been this clear. I think for the moment this is the first time where I feel confident that Intel's turnaround is getting close, and I'm ready to take a small bet on this. But this is not investment advice, I'm just sharing my thoughts with you. Please engage in the comment section. Do you guys think that this is the best opportunity for the up and coming 5 years? And yeah, please like and subscribe, it would help me a lot. Yeah, so that should be all for today, and I'm gonna continue to cover Intel probably more closely now, and see you in the next one.